Remembering the soldiers that turned the tide of World War II, veterans and world leaders gather on the beaches of Normandy for the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings. Sudan is suspended from the African Union until military leaders transfer power to civilians. It comes after what rights groups call a murderous rampage against protesters. And less than 24 hours to go before the Women's World Cup kicks off in Paris. For 1 month, 24 countries will compete for the title of world champion. The opening match pits host France against South Korea. Those are our top stories this hour here on France 24. Good to have you with us. And we begin here in France, where veterans and world leaders gathered in Normandy to mark the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings. By the end of the day, on June 6, 1944, more than 150,000 Allied soldiers had arrived on the beaches of northern France, an invasion that would change the course of the war. Claire Rush takes us through some of the highlights from today's ceremonies.
Thursday's commemorations began in the town of Vers-sur-Mer. In the morning, French and British leaders inaugurated a memorial to the 22,000 British soldiers who were killed on D-Day and in the ensuing Battle of Normandy.
It is incredibly moving to be here today, looking out across beaches where one of the greatest battles for freedom this world has ever known took place.
British Prime Minister Theresa May and French President Emmanuel Macron shook hands with veterans and laid a wreath on the memorial. The two leaders, divided over Brexit, showed a united front just 1 day before May steps down as her Conservative Party leader. Later in the morning, a remembrance service was held in Bayeux, the first town to be liberated after D-Day. Britain's Prince Charles and his wife Camilla were in attendance, along with veterans. Those who served were also honored at the Normandy American Cemetery in Colleville-sur-Mer. Nearly 9,400 American soldiers are buried at the site, which overlooks Omaha Beach. Thousands gathered at the afternoon ceremony, where Macron and U.S. President Donald Trump gave speeches lauding the historical ties between the two countries.
Our cherished alliance was forged in the heat of battle, tested in the trials of war, and proven in the blessings of peace. Our bond is unbreakable.
Some 170 U.S. veterans returned for the 75th anniversary. Macron awarded 5 of them the Legion of Honor, France's highest distinction.
We know what we owe to you veterans, our freedom. On behalf of my nation, I just want to say thank you.
The two leaders walked amongst the graves, solemnly showcasing the Atlantic Alliance, despite tense relations on issues ranging from Iran to global trade to climate change. Meanwhile, in the afternoon, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met his French counterpart, Edouard Philippe, at Juno Beach. Some 14,000 Canadian troops landed here on D-Day.
I stand here knowing that I can never fully understand what our brave men and women in uniform experienced, but it is the responsibility of all Canadians to ensure that their story and their sacrifice will never be forgotten.
Trudeau shed a tear as he paid homage to those who were killed in the largest seaborne invasion in history. The Canadian and French prime ministers laid a wreath in remembrance as bagpipes played on the beach. Macron ended his D-Day commemorations in Colville, Montgomery. In his final speech, he paid tribute to the Free French soldiers involved in the Normandy landings. They formed the Kiefer Commando Unit, named after their leader, Captain Philip Kiefer. The elite group of nearly 180 soldiers was the first Marine commando unit in the French military.
Now, as you may have noticed in that report, one world leader was notably absent from Thursday's ceremonies, Vladimir Putin. The Russian president was not invited for the 75th anniversary of the Normandy landings, despite having attended the 70th anniversary 5 years ago. Anka Ula tells us more.
Heads of state from Britain, France, the United States, and Germany, all marking a pivotal moment in history. But one leader was notably absent from D-Day commemorations: Russia's Vladimir Putin. Invited for the 70th anniversary 5 years ago, Putin did not receive an invitation this year. On Thursday, Putin was instead looking at pandas with Chinese President Xi Jinping, ushering in a new era of friendship between their countries amid increasingly hostile relations with the West. So why the cold shoulder for a crucial ally in World War II? Russia was not involved directly in D-Day, but was instrumental in defeating the Nazis on the Eastern Front. For Moscow, the Normandy landings were not the turning point in the war. Earlier this week, Russia insisted the Allied war effort should not be exaggerated.
According to historians, the Normandy landing did not fundamentally influence the outcome of World War II. This was predetermined as a result of Red Army victories, mostly in Stalingrad and Kursk.
France defended the decision, saying that historically, Russia is only invited every 10 years. But the diplomatic answer downplays the festering tensions between Russia and the West, underlined by Moscow's suspected meddling in Western democracies. Russia-UK relations deteriorated after the poisoning of former Russian spy Sergei Skripal, who was living in the UK. And Macron has been tough with Putin in the past, slamming Russian media Russia Today and Sputnik as state propaganda.
Moving now to Sudan, where pressure is mounting on military leaders to hand over power to a civilian government. The African Union suspended the nation on Thursday following a violent crackdown on protesters. The opposition says 108 people have been killed since Monday, when the military dismantled the sit-in site in Khartoum. Sudan's health ministry, though, puts the number of dead at 61. France 24's Charlie James has this report.
The international pressure on Sudanese leaders is mounting over the deadly military crackdown on protesters. Thursday, the African Union suspended Sudan with immediate effect.
We decide as Council to suspend, as of today, the participation of the Republic of Sudan in all AU activities till the effective establishment of a civilian-led transitional authority as the only way to allow the Sudan to exit from the current crisis.
And the African Union isn't the only one pressuring military leaders this week. The United States condemned the recent attacks on protesters and called on rulers to desist from violence. The United Arab Emirates, a key supporter of Sudan's ruling generals, called for talks to resume. And the United Nations urged all parties to act with the utmost restraint.
What is clear to us is that there was use of excessive force by the security forces on civilians. People have died, people have been injured. It is a basic human right for people to be able to demonstrate freely and peacefully, and that right needs to be respected.
On Wednesday, the Military Council did offer to reopen negotiations, but that was rejected by protest leaders who are demanding justice for all the demonstrators killed since Monday.
Time now to take a quick look at some other news from around the world. In Germany, a court has given a life sentence to a nurse who murdered dozens of his own patients. Niels Hogel was found guilty of killing 85 people with lethal injections, but German police say the real number of victims could be over 200. The trial left many families with painful, unanswered questions, with Hogel himself unable to remember just how many people he killed. He is believed to be the most prolific serial killer in Germany's post-war history. Mexico has announced plans to send its National Guard to the southern border with Guatemala. It's part of an effort to prevent Central American migrants from traveling north to the United States. The U.S. President Donald Trump has been threatening to slap tariffs on Mexican imports unless Mexico takes steps to curb migration. The two countries will continue discussing the issue in talks on Friday. And major sponsors of Brazilian football star Neymar are expressing their concerns over rape allegations. It comes after the Brazilian woman who accuses Neymar of raping her in a Paris hotel room spoke to the media for the first time. Neymar has denied the accusations. The player is also struggling on the field. He'll be missing the upcoming Copa America tournament after injuring his ankle. And another major football tournament is set to get underway this Friday, the 8th edition of the Women's World Cup. Hosts France will face South Korea in the opening game here in Paris. The French women are dreaming of winning their first ever World Cup trophy and are hoping to do it on home turf.
Some players film the field, others touch it. It's here at the Parc des Princes in Paris that the French team will play the opening match of the Women's World Cup on Friday. The hosts will square off against South Korea. Coach Corinne Diacre is looking ahead with a positive attitude.
We know that the first game is important, but even if we don't win, we'll play 2 more games to determine whether we can finish first or second in the group.
To the right is team captain Amandine Henry. The midfielder plays for Olympique Lyonnais Féminin. The club has won France's Division I League 13 times and the Champions League 6 times. It's one of the best women's clubs in the history of football.
It's a dream to play in the World Cup, especially in your home country.
Amandine was 8 years old in 1998 when the French men's team won its first World Cup.
Yes, I'm obviously from the 1998 generation, so I have great examples to follow, especially Zinedine Zidane.
If France takes home the Women's World Cup, it will win €3.5 million, or 40,000 euros per player. That's 10 times less than the French men's team, which won €33.8 million.
The comparison between men's and women's salaries has always been a debate. It's a big issue in today's society.
The South Korean team also checked out the pitch before their appearance in the 8th Women's World Cup. The U.S. has won 3 titles, a record in the tournament, while Germany has won twice. France's best performance was in 2011, when it placed 4th.
Finally, we end in Jerusalem, where thousands of people danced and kissed their way through the streets on Thursday in the city's 18th annual Gay Pride Parade, a festival that exposes deep divisions in Israel between the country's secular and ultra-Orthodox Jews. Claire Muffson tells us more.
Some 10,000 rainbow-clad revelers marched through the streets of Jerusalem, waving flags and signs reading civil marriage in Israel now, and kissing under a makeshift wedding canopy.
I think Gay Pride in Jerusalem is wonderful. I think it's just taking a stand for people who are just trying to live their life and love who they love and create a family the way that they want to. And people have to feel safe wherever they are. Jerusalem is one of those places.
Security is tight. In 2015, the Pride event was marred by a knife attack by an ultra-Orthodox Jew. 16-year-old Shira Bunky, pictured here, was killed while others were injured. For many, the best way to honor her is to persevere.
I'm not afraid of coming here because I think what happened 5 years ago, the murder, only increased my motivation to come here.
The diverse crowd includes religious Jews, showing their solidarity.
From my point of view, it's very important to march in Jerusalem. It's our capital, and like any other march, there should be a gay pride too. It's also important to remember that there are also religious people that are from the LGBT community.
It's a potent message in the conservative city where displays of gay pride tend to draw vocal protest from the substantial Orthodox population. This time was no exception, with police cordoning off a counter-protest by an ultra-nationalist group, where signs read, "Keep the Holy Land holy."
We're going to have to leave it there for this edition, but do stay with us. We'll have more news coming up in just about 15 minutes.
Hello and welcome to Tech 24. On the show this week, we'll be speaking to the co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology. Former Googler Tristan Harris wants Silicon Valley to start having a conscience. And we will be testing the Mara phone. It's the first smartphone made entirely on the African continent. We begin with a technology that's highly controversial. Facial recognition may be the way of the future, but it's got privacy advocates up in arms. A school district in New York plans to roll out the technology, with teachers saying it'll be a colossal waste of money. But not everyone's jumping on board. San Francisco has banned the use of facial recognition software, a move hailed by civil rights advocates. Claire Rush reports.
Banning facial recognition software in the tech capital of the U.S. The San Francisco ordinance prohibits all city agencies, including police, from using the technology.
It's psychologically unhealthy when people know they're being watched in every aspect of the public realm. There are many ways to make our society secure without living in a security state. And we have very good policing, but we don't want to live in a police state.
Facial recognition technology is controversial, but increasingly common. It's used by corporate tech giants like Apple and Facebook to unlock iPhones or tag people in photos. It's also used by some police departments to identify suspects by comparing images of people's faces to pictures in government databases like mugshots. The San Francisco Police Department has opposed the ban. It said it doesn't currently use facial recognition, but that it may be a useful tool in the future. But privacy advocates say the technology can be flawed and inaccurate.
Last summer, the ACLU scanned the faces of Congress against a mugshot databases, and Amazon's facial recognition service produced 28 false matches. Of those false matches, a significant amount were people of color.
Despite the technology's flaws, some countries have rushed to use it. China has built a vast system of facial recognition based on its network of surveillance cameras. According to the New York Times, Beijing uses facial recognition in part to track its Uyghur Muslim minority. It's believed to be the first known example of a government intentionally using the technology for racial profiling.
To talk more about facial recognition, we can bring in our expert, Dhananjay Kadilkar. Dan, there's no denying that facial recognition technology is a milestone, but it can also turn faces in photos and paintings into talking heads. How can it do this?
Well, yes, researchers from Samsung's AI Center in Moscow have used machine learning in order to bring faces in photos and paintings to life. They do this by using artificial intelligence networks. Now, these networks are trained with thousands of videos in order to make them learn how human faces move. And then by using a scanner, the source video, so for example, if we have a video of a talking head, those videos are scanned, the facial landmarks are determined, and then those facial landmarks are applied onto the target face. Here we have Mona Lisa. And once this application is done, you can turn a still image, a single photo, into a talking head, as we see here. So there are 3 different videos that were applied to the Mona Lisa image, and you have 3 different videos of Mona Lisa.
It's fascinating. Thank you very much, Dan. Now, we can't talk about technology without talking about our relationship with our smartphones. Unlike drugs or alcohol, our phones aren't an addictive substance, but they alter how we interact with each other and even with ourselves. Tristan Harris used to work at Google, where he realized the negative impacts of attention-grabbing business models. Last year, he co-founded the Center for Humane Technology, and we can go across to San Francisco and speak to him now. Tristan, why are we, and I'm talking about adults, teenagers, and children, so susceptible to smartphone addiction?
Well, because it's not just about addiction. It's about a whole interconnected set of harms. If you think about shortening attention spans, downgrading civility and decency, mental health, social isolation, addiction, polarization, outragification, these are all subproducts of a race to extract human attention. Because if you think about it, all these technology companies are trapped in a race to the bottom of the brainstem, to crawl down the brainstem and get deeper into you, to extract and scoop out human attention, because that's the business model. And that means that's why we feel it as addiction. But talking about it as addiction is like talking about climate change as just coral reefs, right? So we have this problem where all these companies are caught in a race to get human attention, and it's externalizing harm that reinforces each other. The more outraged people are, the more polarized they are, the more isolated they are, the more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and extremism. And the technology is tilting the whole world in this more extreme-making direction, which is really an existential threat that we call human downgrading, which is like the climate change of culture.
Now, you want to see technology realigned with humanity. How would that work exactly?
So the first step is we have to move from an extractive to a regenerative attention economy. So if you think about it, right now, technology treats humans as resources for our data, resources for our attention, in the same way that we've domesticated cows to be the best for producing milk and their meat, and we don't really care about the cow. Technology is domesticating humans to be perfect for scooping out all that attention to get it out of us. So to fix this problem, we have to move from an extractive attention economy that treats humans as resources to a regenerative attention economy that's not coupling profit with how much attention they get from us. So if you think about, Lyft and Uber, the services that get you out in the world, their business model isn't to keep you fiddling with Lyft and Uber. Their business model is to be helping you get to where you want to go. And right now, technology is kind of like a GPS for your car, but its whole purpose is to suck you in and then never take you to where you want to go. So we need to move to a world where technology acts more like a GPS for our values that helps us navigate life, and the purpose is not to suck us into the screen.
I understand that you want companies to go to a regenerative attention economy, but what's in it for them? Because they're thinking about their bottom line and not the greater good.
Yeah, so this is where a company like Apple is in the best position to make a change like this, because Apple's business model is not directly coupled. You can't ask Exxon to stop using fossil fuels, even though it's causing climate change and is threatening all of us. You can't ask YouTube to stop trying to maximize how much attention they want to scoop out of our brains and tilt the world towards conspiracy theories, because that's their business model. So you have to go up a layer. If you think about who's the government, there's the regular government we should ask for policy that helps move from extractive to regenerative. And then there's also Apple is kind of like the government of the attention economy, because in the way that they make iPhones and the way that Google makes Android, they could change the dynamics so people aren't competing for attention. But to do that, we have to get clear on the cost, that free is the most expensive business model we've ever created, because it's actually causing this havoc in society. Why does it feel like everywhere around the world, people are going crazy at the same time? Everyone is outraged. Everyone's believing in more conspiracy theories. People are stopping to vaccinate their children. This is actually in part because technology is trying to amplify these things. Because of the free business model, it wants to figure out what's good at keeping your attention, and algorithmic extremism is the best way of keeping your attention. So not because any one of these companies wants that to happen, but that's because what the technology does.
Tristan, thank you very much for joining us on the program today. It's time now for Test 24. And this week we're testing the first smartphone manufactured entirely in Africa. What are its features, Dhananjay?
Well, yes, the phone I have is the Mara Z. It's made by the company Mara Phone. Now, it has a 5.7-inch HD display. The outer screen is made of Gorilla Glass, so it can withstand some hard knocks. It has two cameras, both are of 13 megapixels. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon processor and octa-core processor. Then it's pretty sleek, as you can see. It also runs the Android One operating system. It has other features like it has a Dolby sound system.
Really?
So yeah, all this combined, it comes at a very reasonable price, only $219. So yes, it's an interesting phone, and the other phone is Mara X. It has a 5.5-inch display and it runs the Android Oreo operating system.
And how's the battery life?
Well, yes, interestingly, it also comes with a turbocharger. So if you need to charge your phone very quickly, you'll be able to do about 60% or charge 60% of the battery in 30 minutes. So it has a 3,000 milliampere hour battery, so it should last on its own for a day and a half.
Not bad. Thank you very much for that, Dhananjay. And that's it for this week of Tech 24. Thank you very much for watching.
certainly heard about the slow food movement, but what about the slow flower movement? We're in the Netherlands, Europe's flower capital, to explore why it's time to reconsider the way we grow and appreciate our bouquets.
Down to Earth, presented by Mireille Dundas on France 24 and France24.com.
At this cemetery in southern Tunisia, Nadia visits her mother's grave. In this district on the island of Djerba, dark-skinned inhabitants and those with lighter skin are not buried in the same place. Nadia's mother was buried in a piece of land in the so-called slave cemetery. Two other cemeteries lie a stone's throw away, reserved for ahrar or free men, people with light skin.
This situation was always like this. We got used to it. Cemeteries for slaves and cemeteries for free people. Everyone has their own corner.
Black Tunisians, including some descended from slaves, make up a minority that is barely visible in the North African country. On October 9th, Tunisia's parliament adopted a landmark law penalizing the use of racist words, the incitement of hatred and discrimination. These acts are now punishable by 3 years in prison and a €5,000 fine.
Of course, this law will free us somewhat from this sort of ghetto and separation. Today, when we ask to fix all this, we have something to head towards. We will head towards justice.
Unlike big cities such as Tunis, in Djerba, the inhabitants bury the dead without requiring permission from the council. This allows for divided burial sites according to social status or even skin colour. Until today, town halls in Djerba use a designation on birth certificates referring to the master who granted freedom to the ancestors of certificate holders. In the neighbouring town of Gospa, many complain about the prevailing racism.
They will tell you that there's no discrimination, but it's very present. They say there's no difference between white and black, but in reality it's the opposite. In reality, they despise us. The mentality here hasn't changed.
For activists, the October 9 vote is already recognition by the Tunisian state that the problem exists. They are now hoping to move towards reconciliation, ending distinctions based on skin colour.
Fake news. Noun. False stories that appear to be news, spread on the internet or using other media. At France 24, our job is to provide you with information that's been verified. We check sources, we check facts, we sort what is true from what is fake.
At the France 24 Observers, we verify photos and videos circulating online. If they're fake, we let you know and tell you how we spotted them.
In Fact or Fake, we dig into viral stories around Europe to shake out the truth from the trash.
Every day on Info Migrants' website, we fight fake news spread on social networks about the reality of migration.
France 24, news based on facts.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.